Hello, good morning. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Auditorium number 1 at São Paulo Expo in our big festival. My name is Brenda, and we are here to discover together everything that is good in the second day of the largest indie game event in Latin America, Big Festival 2022. You can check out our full schedule by accessing the website at www.bigfestival.com.br. You can see everything about the festival, besides a lot of great games and an open voting for you to pick your favorite. Well, that's the housekeeping messages, so let's find out what is in store for us. So the next panel is part of our big business lineup and is brought to us by Apex Brazil. On this panel, we're going to have a chat between Brazilian companies that managed to capture successful investment that was much needed. So that made them become success cases. But how long does it take for you to negotiate something like that? And what changes in the next day? How do you plan the transition from the original company to the investor group? Our guests are going to tell us all about it and much more. Are you ready? So I am very happy to call to the stage Rodrigo Carneiro, CEO at Puga Studios, Ronaldo Cruz, founder and COO at Fortis, and co-founder at Octagon Games, Sandro Manfredini, business director at Aquiris, Rafael Costa, founder and CEO at Monomito, and Jefferson Valadares, founder and VP at Doppio. And to moderate this great conversation that we are about to hear, we have a Fortis journalist, Luiz Gustavo Pacete.
Sejam muito bem-vindos e o palco.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Muito obrigado.
The stage is yours.
Pessoal, bom dia.
Thank you, Brenda. Good morning, everyone, for all of those that are here and for all of those that are watching online from different parts of the world. I believe this is not really a panel. This is a team. This is a proper one. And it's so great. I mean, a lot of the cases that are here represented, I kept tabs on, and there are some discussions that we're going to try to bring to the forefront here and hear these folks' perspective, because investment is not always a good thing. So that's the first provocation here. We always feel that, oh my God, I'm getting this investment, my life is going to shoot up, but it's not really like that. I mean, all the cases are positive here. All of these folks are panning out, but it is a major challenge. And it's an important topic because it has to do with culture, business stance, and all of that. But let's take a first round of introductions. Let me start with the magician. Please tell us about Puga, Rodrigo. What is happening at this point? What is your deal? Tell us about it. Good morning, everyone. How are you guys doing? My name is Rodrigo Carneiro. They know me as the magician. We are being acquired by this Ukrainian company. They have a presence all over the world, and we have been in talks with them since October last year. One question that everyone asks is that, oh, you're being bought because of the war in Ukraine, right? And it's quite the opposite. We've been talking way before that. So the process was great. It was intense. As we were in talks, unfortunately, the Russian invasion happened in the midst of all of that. But yeah, it's turning out good. It's a lot of work, I'll tell you that, but it's positive. Ronaldo, tell us a little bit about your move. You know, Fortis and Octagon. What is the stage of this process? What is happening? Right. Octagon had some investment in the past. we call it exit, right? We were looking for a partner. So first, in comes AVC, puts some money in, gets a share of the company, and then we sort of we structured ourselves up until a real partner steps in. And we were, we were trying to find the right partner. And my colleague here was a board member, and he's laughing actually because he knows exactly how it works. But in practice, it's not that easy, You might find a partner, but the fit is not great. Sometimes it's a good fit, but it's not the right moment for the company. And so, it's a whole process to find somebody. And it's not easy by any measure. There's been a lot of frustration, a lot of events that unfolded. But when we finally found the right partner, we found the lid to our pot, so to speak, which is 40s Games. And they had been looking for a studio that was in line with them. They wanted a player that was experienced in the market that they wanted to focus on. They wanted a company that had the right mindset and the right foundation. So we announced it in February, but we had been in talks for a long time. We had our Cupid, which was Jeff. Jeff was a board member. So you can see that, with a board member, we got together with Sean, and Sean is definitely checking me for facts. But yeah, it was love at first sight, man. As I said, this is what we want for ourselves, and this is the type of professionals that we are looking for. That's the profile, and we clicked it. It was a match. So we took it from there, and there's a lot more to tell about. And Jeff, just to take the opportunity that we are sitting on the same table, tell us a little bit about the complexity of the process. Now it's a whole love story, but what was it at first? I was actually laughing because we promised not to speak ill of the people in the past. And, you cannot speak bad about your ex-girlfriend. No, they were wonderful. It's not too bad. It's not about bad-mouthing your ex. It's a provocation. Right. So getting into it, let me just go back since we are speaking about investment because some of you know I had Jinx, a different company that was founded in 2000, and we got some investment in the year 2000 actually. Obviously, today is much easier, much less complications. And I think, even though that it's based in Portugal today, and the company that I sold, we got some investment as well, Amazon, Google, and some VCs. But yeah, we exited, and we were able to get that connection between Ronaldo and Fortis because I saw a fit there. It's about understanding. On Sean's speech, they were talking about, how do we sell a company? First you have to understand what you are trying to make happen. So the fit is really important. You got to be clear about your objective, and you got to find the right partner. So yeah, I guess I helped out, play the Cupid. Of course, and you have the Sean spreadsheet, which is now famous with his speech, and it's got to be in line with the spreadsheet. Nah, it's just trying to make a joke here. Yeah, and by the way, I'll go back to you guys, but Rafa, tell us a little bit about Monomito within that ecosystem, which is space. That was a recent one as well. So these are Brazilian companies, but you also have foreign investors. Tell us about that. Around 2020, Monomito understood that it was the right time for us to look for partners and try to scale up the teams and try to scale up the objectives that we had on the mobile market. And we partook on many rounds, and we were just trying to look for potential partners all over the place. And we came across Loud, and it was love at first sight as well, because their objective in the game market was really in line with our objective to step into that multiplayer competitive market, and it was really in line with the products as well. And they were out there, they were part of a group, sort of a holding. And today they have 7 companies in the gaming industry, right? So it's an ecosystem of companies that help each other. And they also have some foreign investment. They have investment on each of the companies, and the objective is to self-help, and to cater to the market as a whole. So Monomito is the development arm, and it was a smooth process, really. Obviously, all the red tape takes a long time. It took over a year until we got all the paperwork together. But since the beginning, it's a really close relationship, and we always keep that contact. We keep it close because we don't want to have any noise in between, and we try to develop the ideas together. So nothing really changed in our culture. We're still the same. We just embraced the good stuff from them. Great, Sandro. I haven't forgotten about you. If you want to continue with them, it's all good. No, I'm going to tie that question up, and so we can raise the temperature a little bit. But tell us a little bit about Epic Games, because myself as a journalist, obviously, this is a full plate for me. But tell us about Epic Games. What happened? Well, in April, we announced Epic's minority investment. We actually had a venture capital fund that got into the company in 2014, and as most VC, they have a cycle. And our cycle with them for the fund specifically, that has started in 2011, and it was supposed to be done by 2021. So when we participate in this type of investment cycle, we know that at some point, either they're going to renew with a different VC fund, or we're going to have to help and look for an exit for that fund. In our case, it was also in line with our eagerness to have a cycle with a strategic investor. We went out to the market to look for one, and the relationship with Epic made it happen. So we announced that. We announced that on April this year. Great. So you may notice that everyone is in their honeymoon stage. It's all good here. So before I bring the problems into the equation, I think it's really interesting to look at this panel and see it for what it is. We are talking about Brazilian companies that pique the interest of foreign investors. It's not only in Rio and São Paulo. We are talking about northeastern Brazil. We still need some women up in here. Next year, I really want to have some girls up here making it happen and making deals. But this is a very interesting situation. This is a decentralized company that has the potential for it. And Sandro, let me throw something at you. In other interviews, you said something about the investor's perspective for games, to take games seriously and to recognize that potential. What has changed, though? Is the Brazilian industry being taken seriously now? The reason for you to be here, I think it illustrates that there is some the momentum happening. But now from an investment perspective, the interest in Brazilian games, what happened? I don't think there's been any magic trick. What we are seeing here is Big Festival is like the 10th edition or something. I think that shows that we just have some consistency in the Brazilian market as far as launching games, quality games. We have some pioneers sitting here like Valadares. In the 2000s, these guys were already soaring high and getting investment. There's not a lot of examples as far as VC funds that invested in Brazil. So I think it's just a consistency that we achieved. And I think that is really helping making things happen. As a matter of fact, it's 15 years here. These guys are at it for 15 years. I've been in the industry for 10. This last decade, I think, was really great for us to foster that. Abra Games, Big Festival, all of that helps people come together. And for example, in our relationship with Hector here that was at Sony at the time, we know him since 2014. All of that adds up, it counts. We are showing that we have talent, we have quality. We don't have as many opportunities, especially as far as funding, that other markets have, but we're getting there. And Jeff, Sandro was talking about 15 years and over a decade in the industry and the evolution of it. Of course, that we are talking more about the interest, but before that, there's a lot of challenges. People standing alone, trying to make it happen. How did we develop? Right, for sure. And to me, I'm so happy to see the industry right now compared to when I started back in, when there was anything to show for. And we got to meet different companies, we made some friends, and then we got with Abra Games, and today you have events like Big, and you have Brazilian presence abroad. I'm so proud to see that journey in the last 20 years, but early on, there was nothing. you look at the companies and the sheer quality today. I mean, at the time we didn't know anything. We just learned it by doing it. Even investment. I mean, we talked to investors and we fell in that first drop at NASDAQ. There was some investment and we were trying to learn things, and it's nothing means anything until you have that money in that account. So we signed the papers, and then you had that drop in April 2000 in NASDAQ, and nobody took our calls anymore. That was the first investment that we almost got. And then we got something else with a Brazilian fund later on. It's more of a family office. It wasn't as professional. Today you have much more professional funds. 10 years ago, you really started seeing those funds that are a little more organized, because early on, man, it was just like a few funds here and there. Now we have some more organized funds. And today you have Stratégico, you have Fundo. I mean, you have so many options for funding. Back in the day, you didn't have anything. We were just grinding. Now, considering that you are at this important stage, I mean, what attracted these folks to take a look at Pulga, first of all? And also, when you do a deal, when you sit at the table, when you try to bring a partner, what is the attention point? What do you have to mind to make it make sense? Well, at Pulga, we always focused on culture quite a bit, and that really helped on our deal. They came over, they went over to Recife 2 years ago, and they went over to Pulga, spent a week. We presented the process and everything that we had, and they were impressed, with everything that we had in the company. And they said, you guys are us 4 years ago. So that was a great feedback to get at the time, because it's not only about the deal, it's about the structure and the culture. We went over to Poland as well. We couldn't really get into Kiev, but we spent a week with them and we got to know the group. We got to learn about the business. We met the CFO, and we just realized that, man, I was so impressed. These guys are in Eastern Europe and the culture is so similar to ours. Pulga always focused on its culture, because now you're not the owner anymore. Now you have bosses, right? So it's another layer on top of it. And that's really important to assess, because that can also take roots in the company, that culture. You have to really work well with people, and you gotta try and bring the best out of them. And yeah, cultural alignment to us is really important. And Ronaldo, there is one thing interesting that Magician said, which is the independence, right? When you have a partner. So I'll pose that question in two parts. What changes when you are no longer independent? And what is the role of culture when you look at independent studios? What is that culture like? Right. So Octagon went through the mill as far as different stages. We wanted to make games whatever the cost, but there were some other things in tandem. So we understood that the Brazilian market had a certain moment. For you to do your own games at first was hard. So we took something, and we had our desire to work with games, to make games, and through peaks and valleys, we always went back to what was important, because any gaming entrepreneur in Brazil knows that there is a lot of peaks and valleys. And when we first got an investment, which was right at the beginning, it was a whole excitement, a whole uproar, but we got hit quite a bit. Jeff was sitting on our board, and I remember when he said, I think you forgot this, man, but I do remember when we were at a very tough point, and he said, no, man, copyright, your own games is cool, the upside is wonderful, but investors now are in line with us, and we have to somehow keep the team and keep the culture of what we built, because we want to have people here. And Jeff said, but that's the beginning of the end, though. And I was all concerned. I was like, man, you don't know, but I lost sleep for a weekend. I don't know, that was like 8 years ago. And I said, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my structure, keep the team, and I'm going to try and have some revenue streams going, but I'll maintain the people. The desire to make games is key. So I'll try to find a business model to where I can still stick to some objectives that are important, but at the same time that creates revenue. And that's when we pivoted to different business models. We did pivot, but the team stayed the same. And I'm proud to say that we have some employees that come from different companies we worked at and are still here. Someone said me, man, thanks for bringing me over. This guy is like 12 years in the company. So we did value people. And I think that's what maintained us at it until we reached this new stage with 40s.
Rafa, now there's another layer of complexity. Well, not a layer, but a different context when you're in an ecosystem. Companies that have strong personalities with a story. What changes that? Because it's not only about the culture from an investor, but the relationship you have with other companies, even working together very often. So what changes in your case? Well, I think paying attention to the investors, to the investment board, that's very similar to what they do. So we do have another layer that that defends the entire group, and we have a responsibility with the companies that work together with us in different projects. So, for example, we just launched a game called Gunstars, and we're including Web3 elements, which are made by another company in the group. So it's a responsibility that we have along with them, and that changes our perspective for Monomito. We have to see what else we need to embrace. It's not the same spirit as we had 2 years ago with independent indie games that were fun and that's it. You need to look at additional factors. That's interesting because we're in a context in which a lot of things are coming together. Crypto, Web3, Metaverse, NFTs. So, Sandro, a business perspective, besides these challenges, investors are giving you the possibility of having new revenue streams with new business lines. How does that work? Does it make sense? When you have an investor, when you have an investment, does it automatically change your focus? Do you also need to look at other lines? Do you also need to look towards growth? What complexity is added when you have a new investor with money on the table and when you need to expand? Well, in our case, it wasn't an acquisition. So Epic joined us for what we're doing. So actually, right now, they're like an older sibling who is teaching us how to do things that would take much longer to learn by ourselves. So it doesn't mean that right now we're opening several other business lines or games. Right now, it's quite contrary. We're focused on what we have been doing to improve them even more. And we're learning what we can do to make the best of what Epic is offering. From the synergies that we have, which are obvious because we have games developed in Unreal Engine, and the publishing arm, which tends to be very important for us. The theory behind this marriage is how we can take our games, which have had a lot of visibility from the public, to a much wider audience. So that's what we're focusing on right now. Investments, usually when you're getting an investment, you need to say what you're going to use it for. So very rarely do you get money and then you decide what you'll do. You've already had the conversation and said, I want these funds to work on that. So there is a commitment. Ronaldo used the word pivoting, and that's something that happens. You get an investment and you need to work on that. You might get different opportunities, but if you got your investment for that, you have a responsibility, so you need to focus on that. And if it works, if you want to pivot, you need to talk to your investor. You can say that you've tried and it's not working and you're doing something else, but you can't really do anything you want with the funding. It's not how it works. And Jeff, I think focus is a very clear factor, but once again, we have several things happening.
fato de manter o foco e olhar para outras coisas.
Staying focused, looking at other things, the euphoria of investing in a studio and bringing it towards crypto or whatever, looking at the foreign experience. Is this a trend? Is there some euphoria? When investors look at an ecosystem, they also start looking from different perspectives, not only development, games, right? Yeah, I'd say that investors are always looking for something. There's always the fad, right? Our first investment in 2000 was because of the internet, right? People wanted to invest in web, and we would say that we have web games, and they would get very excited and want to join us. But then after the bubble burst, everyone stopped liking that. And then in 2014, we were talking about VR all the time. If you said you wanted to do something with VR, people would just dump truckloads of money in front of you. And of course, last year it was crypto. So, and just before I had the transaction with Fortis, I was on the second round, and I was doing something on video, chat, voice, but I'd say that half of the meetings, people would bring up, couldn't you include blockchain somehow? And I knew that if I said yes, I would get a higher likelihood of getting funded, but you have to know what you want. Do you want to raise money at any cost? Do you want to just tell them what they want to hear? If you have a good background, you can do it, but is that the right thing to do? That's a different story. I think you made it very clear, right? There is some euphoria, and it can be tempting. And talking about balancing focus and strategy, again, following the example that Jeff mentioned, you often get the temptation of following a certain path to get an investment. But in your case, how do you balance those two things? How do you look at the market trends? Our case was much easier because Momentus does what we do. So they came in to expand in Latin America, and they wanted to see how the company could do it. So that really facilitated our conversation. We have similar ambitions, good ambitions, right? Our ambition is not to end our competitors, but rather to create a good environment, train people so that they can work with us in the future. And that's the option that we have. We want to expand Latin America, Pugas, and other companies so that we can leverage our business even more, as we do in services. And in services, we're focused on people. Without people, you don't have a client, and without a client, you don't have people. So we came to Brazil thinking about that. Brazil is a great area to develop talent, so why shouldn't we do it? Well, acquisitions are different from investments. With investments, you're getting money for what you'll do in the future. So in your case, you're getting money for what you've already done because you're already well established. So acquisitions are different. Ronaldo, something related to big festivals, something that we mentioned in the conversations here is the industry. Okay, we've got this far. We've talked about the fact that there is some foreign interest in our potential, but what challenges are there? What is the driver when you look at the industry? How do you strengthen our industry? I don't think we have enough time to answer that entire question. Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. You're talking about the perspective I have in the industry today and the challenges we have for the future. What we've been seeing since we started developing games is that it's not about having a good or a bad market, but markets have different speeds. Things take longer to take off in comparison to Silicon Valley. Things do happen. We just wish it were faster. So, for example, in your generation, VCs were organized, but in our days, it was different. But still, you still see a lot of people giving in to temptation, as you said. And I think it sort of makes our industry lose sight of what we should be focused on. And then investors get disappointed. When we got investments in the past, we had a mission of making things grow and working so that other investors would come in. So it's very difficult for an industry to develop without investments. So it's great when cases work because that drives more success. But I remember we were getting investments. A group that had gotten an investment years ago had not given good returns. So it was very difficult to get VCs, and now we're getting them again. This comes and goes. Our speed, our pace could be better. And why are we not getting the same rates of investments as the consumption market is growing? We wish it were happening, but the only way to do it is by working hard and creating good examples and being focused, of course. And Sandro, since we're talking about being focused, how do we accelerate that process? I think you made it very clear, but how do we accelerate that considering we're in a great moment for the market? What do you mean? What should we accelerate? How do we accelerate this evolution? How do we make the market organize itself better? How do you fix Brazil? You have 15 minutes to talk about gaming in Brazil. Yeah, and you can talk all day. If anyone can do it, it's you. Yeah, I don't know if there's a way of accelerating it even more. I think growth sort of comes exponentially. The examples we mentioned in this panel just illustrate what is already happening, and it's not going to stop here. In the next 12 months, we'll certainly see other companies receiving investments. So I think examples follow each other. Last year, we had Aerohide in Uruguay. We had investments in Colombia. So the more companies look this way, others sort of get curious and want to come and see as well. So I think it will be a natural movement. I think it's important to do it as an industry, as an association, in events, so that companies know where to go, so that they're focused, and I think it will just happen naturally. It's funny, I lived in Finland, so I was in Helsinki before they were the hub they are today. But that's how it started as well. They had some companies, some of them were successful, some were acquired, and people were able to do bigger things because they got American funding. I learned how to do processing and marketing, which was not very common here at the time. And then one company takes off. First Rovio, then Supercell, and now everyone I worked with in 2005 can get funding if they raise their hand, because Finland created this idea that they know what they're doing. So what we really need to do is have the same here. One game, if it takes off, everyone's going to look at Brazil and want to invest here. So I just want to add something. A quality in our industry is that we have an association, and we've always contributed and collaborated with each other. Of course, there are exceptions, but as a rule, we've had good collaborations, and it helps because we tell each other about good opportunities. We try to get other people growing as well. So across the industries you work in, Passetti, I think the gaming industry is one of the most collaborative, because in Brazil, we are competing with the entire world. Our competitors are not here, so we try to help each other out. And it's at a much bigger scale, right? So now let me put this into a different context, and feel free if you want to answer. You talked about VCs or venture capital, persuading investors, and I think this festival plays that role as well. But right now, we're having a challenge when it comes to funding. Unicorns are having layoffs, they're slimming down, they're redefining their strategy, there's inflation in the US, and how does that affect our ecosystem? And two perspectives here. Right now, when money is a bit shorter, how do you get an investor? How do you persuade investors? And is there a pact or not? So
que estão crescendo.
Is investment going to different areas of growth? Yeah, I had that experience firsthand because I had an investment in 2000 and it didn't work. Once there was a crash, everyone disappeared. So now I knew that a crash was coming, and that's why I sold my business last year.
Mais prático que isso, né?
Ah, that's easy.
Olha, minha opinião também é.
Yeah, in my opinion,
Sempre trabalho muito sério. Tem gente
people are working hard, but some people are just messing around. When something like that happens, like if there's a problem with a couple of unicorns, it doesn't mean that everything is lost. Some VCs,
mais além.
as I said, the VC market is going beyond. They're doing better analysis. They're understanding, when a VC analyzed our company, they looked at our resilience during the bad times, and that always comes, right? So this is the kind of thing they're analyzing now. They're more comprehensive in their analysis. So if you're serious about it, you're not going to just want to surf the NFT wave. You want teams and companies that are looking at something long term. That's who you want. Of course, some VCs are more short-term results driven. So it's like the example that Sean mentioned yesterday. You have to talk to many VCs and choose the right guy.
Importante, né? Analisa muito.
Yeah, that's very important. They're much more thorough when they're investing in people now. Anything from you, Maj?
Não está recebendo investimento, né? Está sendo adquirido.
Yeah, we're not getting an investment, we're being acquired, but
Convencer, né? Ser transparente
it's not about persuasion at the time. It's about
e futuro, né? Então, para mim,
being transparent and showing your investors what future perspectives you have. So that's where I come from. You have to know that
vai entrar na sua empresa.
this guy or this girl is going to come to your company and they're going to know everything about it. So you need to be transparent.
Agora, também de forma muito prática.
Rafa, let's keep it short as well. You talked about looking at your investors, your partners, and when you're coming in with an investor, when you're looking at an ecosystem, we talked about being independent, but what can't you compromise on? And this is an alert for you. Referring back to what I said, investments are good as long as there is a connection, as long as everyone does their homework. But what should you not compromise on when you come to an ecosystem with a holding? From the beginning, we wanted to sell what we wanted to do, not only currently, but for the future as well. So there needs to be a connection. It's not only about money or the moment. Of course, I'm very open to anything happening in technology. Our group is very open. So we can find things that match between the different companies in the group. But something I don't compromise on is what we mentioned in the beginning, in the first conversations. Our culture, the way Monometer presents itself in the market, and whenever something tries to draw you away from that, you can have a board meeting, have a friendly conversation, and refer back to your origins. But like I said, since we're in a holding, it's an ecosystem, and you have to be open for many things, and you have to see what makes sense for the company and position yourself. At the end of the day, nothing is going to work if one of the parties doesn't agree with that. Yeah, and I think one of the mistakes that gaming companies make is that they don't understand what VCs want. They might be looking for something specific, and you come in and say, well, I want to sell this game. Okay, good luck. That's a non-starter. VCs like money, they don't like you. So they might say they like you, but what they really like is money. And that's what they want. They want to grow. If you don't have a good business that matches what they want, it doesn't matter. You can take them out to dinner and it's not going to work. If you only want to sell a game, maybe you need to find a different way of getting funding for your company. Sandro, what is non-negotiable here? Yeah, you can't just solve your current problems with money because that's going to generate much bigger issues in the future. So what's non-negotiable is what is good for both sides. What does the company want to do? What does the company believe it's good at? If you want to have a driven team, you can't change your leadership all the time. You either get engaged with that team in a project, in a vision that everyone believes in, and if you switch it all the time, people will just switch companies. So I think what's non-negotiable is what the company needs to do. That's a point that refers to, of course, our history. And that we spent a long time providing services where you really do need to make ends meet. So I know that it's not a simple answer, but when you talk about investments, not in a single investment, but a long-term relationship, you need to have principles and you need to follow what you believe. Otherwise, it won't work.
And principles, right? And an experience with a lot of learning, right? That's right. If you are in line with those that are acquiring, I mean, it works out, right? Of course, it's going to take some tweaks and adjustments, some conversations need to be had. And for example, I didn't feel any impact with the acquisition by Fortis. You know, I felt that we are in line with what we need. And I think that happened to Sandro as well. Both companies went for services. They wanted to keep everyone in-house, but always thinking about the principles. What do we want for the long term? You know, so we were able to maintain some cool stuff. And one day in came this guy offering to do what I was trying to do back then, you know, taking profitable games elsewhere and make games known everywhere, and we found that possibility in Fortis. I think it was no different for you, right? I remember when you were doing like different niches, trying to find your place, and I think you're more focused now. And these principles are your guidance. I mean, when some acquisition happens, when some investment comes in, you don't have to worry about having your culture eradicated because it's already in line. You already know that, you know? So yeah, that relationship works. And Magician, the same thing, considering that you are in the same conversations, right? You are very advanced, but what is non-negotiable for you? Ambition. I mean, the vision of the company and the culture of the company. At Puga, we do not negotiate culture. Our culture is this. If you want to acquire us, you have to maintain that culture in the company because we're staying at the company, right? I mean, you're staying there for years and years. So for Puga, that's the non-negotiable, it's the culture. And that's why we did that culture due diligence. We went and met with the CEO. We spent 3 months with them. And yeah, to us, it's perfect. It's a match. It's a marriage at the end of the day. Well, let's get to the final comments, guys. I think we touched on a lot of topics. And when it comes to partner investors, it's about money. It's about results. Those that are sitting on the other side of the table have to be guardians of the culture. They have to guard the premise. That thing that brought you here by sheer passion, right? But the other side of the table talks about money. So you have to strike a balance. That's really important. And I think it's really interesting what you said about not turning into a mess, right? About not losing focus. It's very important to have that clarity from an entrepreneurial standpoint so you don't lose your focus. And I want to start with just your final comments. Let's go around the table as far as your learning, right? What you have learned, but also keeping an eye in the future. So how does that combine in terms of your potential for business? What is your expectation for the future? And what is the temperature from now on? Maybe one tip that I can give about what we went through, looking for VCs and looking for a way to scale up the business, is look for someone that speaks your language, right? Someone that believes in your work, that understands your culture, and that values what you value, that understands what you are going to. These points are not only important, but they are crucial, because otherwise you can get yourself into a very bad business deal, and there's going to be some demands from it. There's always going to be demands, especially because it's a business. And at the end of the day, you have processes, you have deliverables. You always have to be accountable over it. So it's not just smiles. It's not just, all flowers. But we see a lot of companies with projects that just die off and go to different ones. And again, but I think that's what it's about. Basically, you have to look for someone that speaks your language, someone that you can see a future with, because I don't believe in anything that is ephemeral or for the moment. I'm always about the long term. And considering the future, Monomito got into space caps because of that, because we believe that companies together, they help each other and they strengthen each other. And Loud, given their power, not only the reach, but also their power to get to people. That really makes sense to us. And in any case, it has to do with a lot of things. We are a development arm. This is what we love to do. We love developing fun games, always multiplayer, and the rest is sort of an add-on, for us to soar higher. Jeff, in 1 minute, what if it goes south? What would it do? What do we do? I want that tip too.
Uma das coisas que eu gosto de
Man, one of the things that I like to remind people is that investment is a sale, right? So you have to see it in those eyes. You're going to get a lot of no's. Sometimes sales isn't easy, and it's important to remember because at one point I would do like 4 pitches in one day, got all no's, and at the end of the day I was crushed. But through time, I sort of understood that you really have to find your fit. Sometimes you're tempted to change something because that guy said something during the pitch meeting, and that almost never works out. You really have to find the right people that are a match and work from there.
Silicon Valley.
I don't know if you've seen that HBO series, Silicon Valley. It's a documentary, really. I mean, it's fantastic. One guy is talking to someone that is, got too much money and is about to blow up the company. And the guy says, "Why did you get the money? I mean, didn't you think about saying no?" And he's like, "I was allowed to say no." That's really important. And Sandro, when to say no?
Não o futuro do Brasil agora, tá? Por favor. Mas...
Not the future of Brazil now, but just an end conclusion here about the industry. And just to wrap up.
Eu acho que Aquiles nossa mensagem de resiliência.
Well, I think the message here is about resilience, and we want to leave that message for the long term. Maybe Rafa is the youngest one, but a lot of us have, we've been at it for a while. We have got many, many, many no's until we got here, and not all is good. We're still fighting over it. So if you're looking for opportunities and if you're trying to make it happen, you have to be resilient. Nothing comes easy. And just like Jeff said, and we said before, the ecosystem is in much better shape than what it used to be. And perhaps that'll make some things a little better. You have more people coming over. You don't have to travel so far. You don't have to spend so much money to showcase your work. But think about it on the long term. Whatever we are saying here, as far as saying no and having, a wrong marriage, it's about knowing what you want, but also knowing what you don't want, because it takes a while for you to understand what you don't want also. So yeah, long-term thinking is a good tip. I'll be brief because I don't have a lot of time. Well, frustration is a great teacher, so think about this. And today, VCs are much more organized. We have to take this opportunity. The more no's you have, the more information you'll have. So learn from your mistakes, because that's what really makes you make the best decision. And it's necessary to go through that. I mean, there's no way around it. Resilience, like he said, keeping focused, and learn with your no's. Magician? Now I'm gonna have to speak really fast now. Well, one tip that I have is what we did at Puga. Our cycle started 4 years ago. Puga exists for 9 years as a corporate entity, but our service started 4 years ago. So to have an exchange with the folks from the gaming industry and at Brazil Games, all of that is really important. You can really learn how to get in that business. So get associated, go to Abra Games or Brazil Games and, get in touch with the industry. The networking is what you create and what you learn as well. This is super important for you to grow. Great stuff, guys. I want to say a big thanks to all of you. And again, you have to stay grounded. It is a marriage, a lot of times long term. And again, just like I said in the beginning, there is a relationship to it. I mean, next year I hope we have more Black people, trans people, girls involved, because you brought this over here and you had to take your lumps. There's a lot of challenges around the way, but I loved being a mediator to this panel. Round of applause to these guys, because they really made it happen here.